first thing I would like to do is to congratulate IPBES for receiving the Nobel Prize. It's an amazing achievement for a platform only 10 years old.
IPBES has become extremely influential in informing policy throughout the world, and the governments are actually responding to that. We've made a huge amount of efforts to make sure that it's not policy prescriptive, and simply providing information and ideas, original ideas on how things can change, how society can change, how socio-economy can change, and this has made a difference.
IPBES is informing us about the consequences of some of our socio-economic choices. It's giving us some tools, such as models. For example, if Europe wants to move into biofuel use, what would be the impact on biodiversity in Europe or in other parts of the world?
For policymakers, it's very relevant because it produces the deliverables and products that are very relevant to policy making, etc. It's very credible as well because it's scientifically independent and good quality work. And it's also legitimate because it involves different voices, different stakeholders.
Stakeholders were actually one of the core reasons of success of IPBES. Despite the fact that it's an intergovernmental platform, it is completely dependent on knowledge and the contribution of knowledge in various forms, not only scientific form. It is eventually the knowledge produced by volunteers, produced by scientific organizations, and these are the stakeholders.
NGOs work a lot on projects. They work together with people, with farmers, with foresters, with local authorities, and they can give valuable information where the hindrances are for implementing biodiversity.
And I'm very proud that IPBES was able to build the capacity of the least developed countries to set up the baseline information on species.
So main contribution of stakeholder engagement is bringing different voices in identification of the main issues of biodiversity conservation and the most effective ways how to tackle and address those issues.
To begin with, we set up the UK IPBES Stakeholder Hub. So we identified potential stakeholders that we believed, from a UK perspective, need to engage. And then we communicated why they needed to engage and why their views were valued.
I'm also very satisfied that IPBES took the challenge with IUCN to develop a red list of ecosystems. So with a partnership between IPBES and IUCN, we now have the world, which is covered by a global database of the ecosystems in risk of collapse.
It's important to be an open process where stakeholder participation is possible, not only on the implementation, but also on the input and guidance level.
My prime advice would be that IPBES should rely on already existing networks to reach out to the people holding data and to reach out to people who are affected possibly by its work.
During this process, it was very important that all the stakeholders understood the limitations and understood the potentialities of IPBES. So they had patience but also perspective. And IPBES was always quite clear enough to handle the expectations of the different stakeholders, to handle frustrations, to handle limitations by offering a joint view.
First of all, focus on drivers, explicitly tackling one driver after the other, and noticing the fact that different drivers act at different scales. The second thing will be to focus on the components of change, not just on the components of why we are losing biodiversity, but how do we change human societies, socioeconomy, consumption societies, even questions of how do we tag it or how do we make it into a fashionable or sexy item which eventually fits to the human evolution or to any creature's evolution.
It's the balance to be realistic, but at the same time to think creatively, to think out of the box, and to try innovative ways.
So it's now a better world than the one I remember without IPBES.